Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. 11.2 was just announced, and that means that the PvP season could be coming to an ending almost whenever. Now, they do give an official 2-week notice, but it also looks like there aren't going to be any more class balance tuning adjustments based on what we've seen so far, and the fact that they've laid out PvP changes for the next patch that you would think would make sense to do right now. And if they're not doing them right now, then it probably means they're not doing any more for the rest of the season. So with this tier list today, I wanted to go over the specializations, talk about their strengths and their weaknesses, the likelihood that they're going to be able to deliver you success moving towards the end of the season, because this is actually the best time in a PvP season to start pushing for rewards, because inflation picks up week to week and it becomes easier and easier to get higher rated. So all ships rise with the system. That is at least one advantage with the current system that they utilize, is that if you manage to persevere through the beginning stages of it, where MMR gets squished down, you do end up getting rewarded towards the end of it. So yeah, we're just going to be covering specializations, reviewing their strengths and weaknesses. Arcane Mage. What is the likelihood of this specialization delivering you success, right? And I'm trying to consider all aspects of PvP. So like 3v3 Gladiator, Solo Shuffle, and rated BGs. I think that Arcane actually stands a really good shot for you right now. It's a very powerful specialization, but it is not a specialization for beginners. So if you're coming in on Mage and you're trying to get the Mage Elite set or something like that, you probably don't want to start with Arcane, and that's your main goal. You want to play Arcane if this is like your life's passion and you want to become the best of all time, then I think it can deliver you success. But if it's like you're just coming off the rip trying to get some fast rewards, you may want to avoid it. And that's why it's important to listen to the commentary around surrounding some of these specializations. But its potency is definitely capable. Fire Mage, it's definitely better than where it was with the changes that have come through. But from my experience, just completing 2400 on it, doing some Battleground Blitz on it, it just feels like an inferior Frost Mage. You feel squishier, you have less defensives. The instant damage is maybe comparable, though, at least now, to Frost, but you don't have the proccing roots. You have no control, similar to Frost. It's harder to land your Meteor, I've noticed. Comet Storm is just infinitely easier to land than Meteor is on Fire Mage. It's got a lot of complications like that. I think it's going to be a lot harder in order to succeed. So for me, I'm kind of putting it a little bit lower. Again, this is based on its power potency. It is a bit easier to play than Arcane, I will give it that. Offensively, but defensively it can feel really explosive. It can feel really fragile. You struggle in multiple caster lobbies, so I think that this is a fair assessment for the end of the season. Frost Mage, this is Giga S tier. This is probably one of the best specs that you could play in the game for almost any PvP bracket at the moment. It's just really well rounded, lots of instant cast damage, can absolutely crush it, and it can ramp damage. Even if you do get to free cast, it can ramp damage. So it's really good control. It can win passively. Mage in general has really good tools for battlegrounds like Ring of Frost and Ice Wall, but Fire is a little bit lower than these two because it just directly compares, right? If you have the choice between these, I would almost always say Frost is going to be your go-to, unless you're a real like Arcane enthusiast. Balanced Druid, I don't see them a lot, but I definitely don't think they're awful. I almost want to save this till the end because you guys are going to be like, oh my god, he's biased. Sometimes I have seasons where I'm putting Boomkin on S tier and I was like, I don't agree with that, and then I put Boomkin down and he's like, he's biased, he's trying to sandbag and make it look like Boomkin is worse than it actually is, or something like that. I feel like Boomkin is just kind of decent. Its defense is still lacking. It's definitely not on the tier of S, for sure. But I am struggling with like A and B, because in Battleground Blitz, it's really good, although a little bit map dependent. You're gonna be a lot better on like flag carrying maps than node based defending maps for Battlegrounds. When it comes to 3v3, you have remarkable burst damage, really good burst damage. I actually think I just saw Rudar tweeting that he completed a Gladiator push or something with not using Cyclone. He built a talent tree and he got Gladiator without using Cyclone. So obviously Boomkin can do well, and we say like the main thing that defines a Boomkin is how they cyclone, and if he could get Gladiator without cycloning, now, maybe he was playing with classes that can cyclone, maybe a Resto Druid or something, and the Resto Druid was just carrying the weight there. That's possible. But it's definitely not bad. So I'll leave it in A tier for now. Maybe we'll adjust it based on where we go from here. But I definitely don't think it's bad. Defense is still a little bit weaker. I think its viability, though, is better than Fire. BM Hunter, for sure. I'm going to end up having too many specs on S tier, bro. I need to, maybe we make another tier of, God tier or something like that, because I definitely think that we're going to be struggling here to be able to fit too many specs on this. So let's just lob these guys up here. and leave it like that a little bit. So BM Hunter are just really good throughput damage at the moment. Now in Battlegrounds, I would say marksmanship is better. You can play BM, but I'd say marksmanship is better. So that is one avenue where if you wanted to be pushing a Radiant BG Blitz, marksman's probably a better option. But if you're pushing a 3v3, both of them are good. So maybe marksman is honestly better than both of them. Maybe I should just slide this guy down a little bit. Just because we're trying to do like an overall list here. So for the game across the board, regardless of content, I think you'd play marksman between all the different variants of the content, but BM is definitely not unviable. Destruction Warlock has really good damage right now. It might be a little bit underrated. I think with the nerfs to Fury Warrior, that's helped you out a little bit, but Demon Hunters are starting to pop up, and that's hard. Windwalkers are hard, but you're lucky that Windwalker is generally just not as popular as Warrior, for example. Like Windwalker is probably stronger than Warrior right now, but its representation is significantly lower, even despite it being stronger. So it's obviously a less popular spec, which goes in your favor as a Warlock because you really don't want Windwalkers being up there. And Battleground Blitz is probably one of the best specs. I swear I have the most fun playing the spec in Battleground Blitz. But in 3v3, when you're the only caster and there's a lot of melee running you down, things get a lot more annoying. They get a lot more annoying. But I really like the Rift PvP talent as well, to be able to port enemies away in rated BGs. I feel like that's a really big carry ability. Portal positioning can be really clutch, and obviously just Chaos Bolt's able to crack out kills in Battlegrounds. So for me, Destro is like at least here overall ranking. If I was ranking only BG Blitz, I'd be shoving this up into God. But I'm trying to consider, all content. I think it's easily onto the A tier. Demonology, on the other hand, is way better than Destro, I think, in Arena. But at BG Blitz, it's a heavy pet-based class. I think it starts to struggle. So if you're picking for Battlegrounds, I think you go Destro. If you're picking for Arenas, I think you go Demo. If you're picking for both, Affliction is slightly inferior to both, I think, in both aspects, but it is more well-rounded. So I'll put Demonology on S tier for now. Affliction Warlock, again, I think it's more well-rounded. I'm going to leave it in on A tier. You can do BGs and you can do Arena on it, but Arena will be harder than if you were Demo, and BGs will be harder than if you were Destro, but they can do both. Whereas Demo will feel way worse than Affliction in BGs, but way better in Arena. Destro will feel way better than Affliction in BGs, but not Arena. I think I said it the wrong way. Demo will feel way better in Arena, not BGs. So it depends on what experience you want, what content you want to do. Devastation Evoker, really good in everything at the moment. It's got really good tools. I think S tier at least. It's a very simple spec. Again, if you're a beginner, I always recommend it. Just one button flying around, immune to snares. You have lots of ways to immune interrupts, which is nice as a beginner because you just get swarmed a lot of the time when you're trying to pick up the game. So a really good option for all content in PvP. Shadow Priest, again, it doesn't really have the bite that it needs for Battlegrounds, the finishing power. That's something like Destro or Marksman can get. And it doesn't really have the kind of utility of Frost, but it does have really strong 1 versus 1, which is very important in Battleground Blitz. There's a lot of maps like Silver Shard Mines where you split off, or Deep Wind Gorge where you can split off, and you have very good 1v1, which is really good for you in Battlegrounds. I think that carries you a lot of the times. A lot of people think, historically Shadow is a team fight spec, but I actually think it's just a really good dueling spec right now. And that's where your strength is going to lie. You can take on some of these Rets and these Rogues that are kind of dominating that bracket from a range perspective. In Arena, you're just solid. I'd say overall, just solid. I'll put you on A tier. Now, I know if this was a tournament tier list for AWC, I would never put Affliction and Destro on the same tier as Shadow. It would just never happen. I don't think. Maybe Shadow, honestly, is even a bump higher than this. Maybe I'll give it that. I'll bump it a bit higher. Also, I think I want to go left to right as far as strength and viability for the bracket, left to right, to try and disseminate this as well, because obviously there's a lot of specs that are just really good right now. But if this was a tournament tier list, it'll look a lot different. This is supposed to be just overall experience on the ladder in the game, not necessarily at the top 0.1%. Elemental Shaman, this one is, I'm going to put it up here. I think it's really good right now. Has really strong just overall damage. Could just randomly crack kills with Ascendance and Ascendance procs. It's a very good option. I think it's decently beginner friendly, even though Shaman is notorious for having a lot of keybinds. Ellie can kind of get away with not using a lot of them. You can just Flame Shock and Lava Burst, Stormkeeper, and get massive lightning bolts. The Tempest build I see popping up a little bit more as well, and I actually wonder its viability in BGs if you could feel like a Destro lock with it. Something to definitely try, because I think it can get crits that are up there with Aim Shot and Chaos Bolt if you play Tempest in BGs, and then you play Farseer in Arena. I think that can be a nice mix for shoring up maybe some of the weaknesses. But even if you play Farseer, you can still get insanely high damage. Augmentation is probably like the most underrated and undervalued spec in the game, at least when it comes to Arena. I very rarely see it in Battlegrounds. I never see it in Battlegrounds, actually, and I don't know if this is the popularity of the spec or what, but it can just win games in the opener because its burst is so high. So yeah, I think it's incredibly underrated. I'm actually going to leave it on A tier as far as viability across the game. I think it could be very similar to Devastation, if not maybe even better. Again, like this is just a wild card, kind of unknown, because just basically nobody's playing it. But I think it does have potential to deliver success in Shuffle 3v3 and Battleground Blitz. But it'll be very cheesy and one-shotty and will require like types of comps that can enable that gameplay. Arms Warrior. This guy's really good in Battleground Blitz. He's really good in Arena. He's well-balanced. Where do we want to put this? Although in BG Blitz, you end up being kind of a team fight character that spins nodes. So you might not feel like the BG is really in your control if you're 1v1 and your base assaulting specs are failing you. You might kind of feel like you're spinning and losing no matter what. So that might be a little bit annoying in Battlegrounds. In arenas, you just get massive executes. And, I think I underrated it in my most recent tier list. Now, there's been a few weeks of playing out on the ladder with no changes to really kind of like adjust to where everything is. So for me, man, the melee are going to be really hard. I'm going to put it on S tier for now. I think it's really well-rounded, but again, you might get frustrated by the team fight situations. Fury Warrior, I don't think it's completely awful. But Arms Warrior just seems to outshine it at the moment. I think, maintaining your Mortal Strike uptime has become a lot more difficult since the changes that they did to it more recently. It's caused a big shift to Arms Warrior. I think the Sharpened Blade just ends up being better because it's on demand. At any moment, you can activate that Mortal Strike. Whereas Fury, it's a bit out of your control as to whether or not the stack is going to be high. But it's not totally unviable. I'm going to put it on B tier for now. And, maybe I think there might be a bit more disparity when it comes to melee relative to range DPS balance at the moment. But I don't, even B might be a little bit too cruel of a ranking for it, but I'll leave it there for now. Assassination Rogue, I'm going to put on A tier. I think its damage output is really good. It does struggle with Paladins at the moment, and the Paladin viability is really high. There's a lot of Holy Paladins, a lot of Rep Paladins. So Rogues are generally a lot weaker, at least when it comes to Arena. When it comes to BGs, I think it's got good team fight, but its 1v1 is lacking. That's where you're going to struggle more than as Outlaw or as Subtlety. Also in BGs, which was brought up to me as an interesting point, is that they removed Shadow Dance, right, from Outlaw and from Assassination. That means you have to use Vanish to get the same effect, but you can't Vanish while you're holding a flag. So Subtlety can use Shadow Dance while holding a flag and still get its stuns and its damage out, whereas you're just kind of, you can't do anything. You just like lose your main damage ability. I think that is a big determining factor between Subtlety's viability versus Outlaw or Assassination when it comes to BGs. And then in Arena, I think Subtlety is just, a higher lethality spec. You can use Vanish defensively without losing damage, necessarily, whereas Assassination is kind of like you need to Vanish to do damage. Subtlety Rogue, maybe this comes as a surprise to some, maybe not to others, but I'm saying it's God. I think absolutely in BG Blitz, it's like the best spec you could play if you master it. Again, if you're a beginner like Arcane, might not be the best experience. Might be better off playing Assassination if you're really trying to do something with Rogue this season. But that's the only main problem is if you go Subtlety as a fresh player, it might be hard to get the elite set. Assassination Outlaw will be hard just because of the tuning. Assassination is probably better for a newer player, but Subtlety is way more well-rounded. Shuffle can be difficult because people DR your stuns, but I think even despite that, it's just really strong. It's just crazy control, crazy output. Yes, there's going to be some annoyances, but if you know how to carry through with damage and off control, I think that you can absolutely run the show with this. Outlaw Rogue, on the other hand, not looking so hot. Do I put it down here? I might just put it down here. I'm really hoping next patch they do either like some PvP talents for the new Killing Spree, or they give you more lethality and damage in exchange for what they've done to you. Because what they did to you is kind of necessary. You just had like infinite rotating defense cooldowns with cooldown reduction, but they didn't really compensate you after, bringing that mechanic more in line. And as a result, I think it's just not as strong. You do have interesting mechanics still in BGs, like grappling hook, but they've kind of taken that away as well. You can't like cheese cap bases anymore with them changing the timer. So I think Subtlety ends up being a lot better in those cases. So I think Outlaw is definitely not fantastic. Enhancement Shaman, I'm going to put on C tier with Fire Mage here. Again, mobility is the main issue with it. and keybind bloat is a major issue. I'm honestly surprised they didn't do any keybind bloat reduction for enhance in the next patch. Maybe they didn't want to do 2 patches as expansion of doing that or something. But in the future, I think it's definitely going to be necessary to bring it down, because for sure Totemic is the optimal spec and has way more keybind, is way harder to play than Stormbringer, and Stormbringer just got nerfed like a bunch of times moving into this patch, so you're kind of just, you don't have a beginner build that was honestly pretty good in most content, but next patch maybe it will be really good. I think the set bonus or something is like you get like Ascendance procs or something like that, which you don't have at the moment as enhanced, which could be really good, especially a Stormbringer. But for the end of the season, it might be challenging. I think you'd be way better off playing Ellie if you want to be going for any rewards. Feral Druid, I'm slapping this on God tier. I think it's just really good sustain. Again, it's not a beginner friendly spec, so these guys on like Marksman, which is super beginner friendly, we'll probably have at least one melee spec up here that's kind of decently beginner friendly for all content. But Feral is really good 1v1 once you get under the hood and you're able to master it for Battleground Blitz. Can do decent team fight damage as well if you need to. Cyclone's just really powerful. Definitely have a lot of viable comps. I think it's just a really good option. I think it'd be silly for me to not put it up here. Unholy DK, I'm going to put you on B tier. I don't think you're terrible, but I don't think you're fantastic. Obviously in BG Blitz though, Death Knight is really good. So even though like I think this is coming down just because of your impact damage wise, you don't have a lot of lethality, but Death Grip in Battlegrounds is really good. You'll feel really good in Battlegrounds. So it's a very polarizing pick at the moment with Death Knight, whether you're doing arenas or you're doing Battlegrounds. If you're doing Battlegrounds, I think you do have a lot of control. Chains of Ice is really strong. You can really make a big difference there as far as controlling enemies, pulling them away from important nodes, preventing them from getting to team fights and things like that, or just gripping enemies together that are in more advantageous positions. You can carry there, but overall I think it's still kind of mid. Frost DK, maybe I'm wrong about this, I don't know, but I see Mez on Warrior all the time now in his stream and not Death Knight, so I think it improved from where it was, but it's like Warrior is still much better, so I think it'd be unfair to really give it any higher of a ranking at the moment. Frost DK, I think it's a similar deal, just kind of mid. Main advantage is Death Grip, Chains of Ice, still the same deal. This one's more burst, is more sustain. I think burst is generally more viable at the moment, unless we're talking like super high level dampening games where nobody dies, which is only happening at the highest level. Maybe Unholy Edge is a bit ahead in that regard, but I would say Frost is more fun and simple to play in that sense, but you also need to know how to do the setup. Frost and these guys are both getting like the biggest touch-ups for the next patch, so hopefully something there is going to change for you. But when it comes to the end of the season, it's honestly just like pick your poison as far as this. If you want to try and do something with DK, I think it's going to be way harder than a lot of other classes, and that's just unfortunately the reality. Demon Hunter, oh boy, dude. This is getting really hard. I'm gonna put Demon Hunter on S tier. I think it's really good, well-rounded, Mortal Strike, lots of mobility, strong 1v1, great in BGs, great in arena. I want to put it on God tier, but then I feel like we have too many melee if I put Red up there as well. But I kind of want to put Red up there as well. I swear Demon Hunter in BG Blitz feels so fun from what I've been playing recently. In arena, you can get kind of farmed by rogues is the only thing. Maybe that's like a fair to put it down on here, because like you'll just get absolutely farmed by rogues and BGs. Like a good rogue would literally just destroy you in the first cheap shot almost. So maybe this is actually a fair spot for it on S. But Ret, we're certainly lobbing up here on God tier. Well-rounded in all content, strong 1v1, good team utility, great overall damage. Definitely a banger one, and we've seen that right with the representation so far for the season. Survival Hunter, this is a hard one, just because you don't really see it a lot. But I feel like it's a lot weaker than BM, a lot weaker than Marksman. And it's similar to Fire in that regard, right? It's just like, well, these other two specs I play are way better and they offer way more things, right? So why would I play it? I don't think it's like completely awful though. So I think like somewhere in B, probably, B to A, maybe low A is probably like a fair chance for it. But if you're picking between all the hunter specs, you're trying to go for a reward at the end of the season, way better off doing like Marksman or BM than Survival. Windwalker Monk, easy S tier. I think maybe it's a little bit weaker than these guys. It's tough to discern 100% why, but I feel like the lockdown of these specs is a lot better, or just their overall potency is a lot better, like the overall throughput. But Windwalker is still a really good option. Definitely, if you're trying to do something with Monk, a little bit harder to play. Getting used to the hit combo, not repeating an ability, but I think it's in a good position. Discipline Priest. Oh god, the healer. I said those were hard, but now it's just going to get harder, it seems. Discipline Priest. Oh, buddy, this is going to be tough. This is going to be so tough for the healers. Trying to consider BGs as well, right? Like trying to do the overall experience. I think maybe we need to start with the things that I know are weaker and work our way to the top. Might be better overall. So for Shaman, I'm going to be wiggling these around a bit, so bear with me probably as I'm putting them down and really talking them out to myself here, because yeah, the healer balance is really good right now, which is why this is going to be hard for me to put them on the board. Resto Shaman, I think main limitations is just people run out of your cooldowns, and with no voice comms especially. If you're doing rated 3s, I think you fall behind in efficiency to a lot of other healers. So I definitely think it's weaker. As to whether it's A or B, I'm uncertain, because I think it does have mechanics that can be really good in BG Blitz, like Static Field and Thunderstorm, and Ghost Wolf can be really good for moving around on the map. So, you know, BGs, it might not be as bad, I think, but in Arena, you're definitely going to notice at least a bit of a drop-off to the other healers. Holy Paladin, I'm putting on God tier, and I'm including BGs, even though you can't use some of your major cooldowns on like flag carriers. I think Hallowed Ground is just an insanely good mechanic in BGs or Arena, just being able to give your team permanent freedom when they run through it, and snaring enemies by a huge margin is very crucial. You have really high throughput. You add a decent amount of damage to your team. I think this is like a fair ranking for Holy Paladin. Mistweaver Monk, again, depends on if you're doing BGs or Arena, right? This is like a very polarized one. In Arena, it's okay. BGs it's really good. So like, I might put it on A tier for now. I think I'll leave it on A tier for now, but I'll tell you right now, like, you can play most of the healers and do fine. I think it's like maybe Shaman and Prez Evoker. You might have a little bit more of a struggle. But the healer balance is a lot better than it has been in a lot of other patches. What do we want to talk about next here? Holy Priest. I think Holy Priest is still really good. I think the immunity angel form, healing output's solid, range stun is strong, especially for lobbies where there might not be a stun at all. I think I'm going to put you on S tier for now. I think it's still in a really good spot. Resto Druid, same deal. S tier, really good spot. I've seen a lot of debate right now for Druids as to whether or not the PvP talent tree form is better than the baseline tree form. Probably just depends on your playstyle. I don't know. Like, people have been very like passionately debating where they think that lies. Discipline Priest. So yeah, I think I have to put it on S tier. This is what I mean by like the healers are all. It's kind of like these three kind of fighting for who's at the bottom, and then these four guys are all very close. Especially with depending on the content. Like I think Disc is really good in BGs. And can be really good in Shuffle as well compared to Holy. But in ranked 3s, people are probably going to be skewing a little bit more to Holy or Resto Druid. Preservation Evoker. I think it has the same limitations as Shaman with positioning if people are not positioning well around you. But in BG Blitz, I think being able to swoop targets to edges, knock them off, I think it can definitely be strong there. But I think it's limited range. It leaves it open. You're very exposed to crowd control, very exposed to getting swapped to. Rogues are definitely a problem for you. I think you'll notice it as probably the weakest healer. And I've played through, I think, all the healers at this point, except maybe a little bit more limited on Mistweaver. But I would say that Prez probably feels the weakest of them all, but not by a huge margin. Like I said, B is like, you can make it work. I mean, you can make any of them work. I'd say maybe Outlaw is really the biggest one as far as lagging behind. This might be harsh for them for Enhance and Fire, but I just feel like the keybind blow up making Enhance is not that great to play, and it's really tough just based on power. Fire Mage is honestly at a decent spot, but its defense is really squishy. You're going to have a hard time with these guys when they attack you. And it's basically just feels like a clone of Frost, except you don't snare and you don't have 2 blocks. So I think it's okay that we say that it's like a little bit lower as a result of that. But those are my thoughts. If you're trying to make a push here towards the final weeks of the season, as far as viability, you can make any of these work. I'm not trying to like write it off hopes and dreams and stuff like that. This is just like, ease of passage, path of least resistance for the specs at the moment for the end of 11.1.7. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion, and I will see you in the next one.